Until recent times, Christ Church at Brackensby had been the jewel in the parish crown, its pews packed out each Sunday. But then 2 chapels of ease had opened at Skyfield and Winterby. A number of aged local employers had retired or died, forcing their workers to seek out pastures new, and the various factors which influence local market forces had seen other nearby villages inflate in population as Brackensby's diminished. Sometimes its vicar, the elderly Father Giel, looked through his wiry spectacles from the pulpit to see half a dozen or fewer folk, and many of them looking half asleep. "It won't do," he told his curate, a pale, bland-looking young man, who had come up from the south a few months earlier and was already tipped for big things, being the nephew of one bishop and, due to his sister's recent marriage, now the son-in-law of another. "They shall shut me down, Father Croft. Send me to some far-flung corner of the diocese. When we return from the ecclesiastical conference, we must set about improving our standing." He rose and paced the vestry with a troubled air. Croft sat counting parish funds at a small wooden table, and Father Giel, though he prided himself on a most abstemious general practice, helped himself to a goblet of brandy. "We could petition the bishop," he suggested, in a voice implying he was clutching at straws. "Request that our rival—" He corrected himself and resumed after a sip of brandy. "Our neighbouring chapels adjust the dates and times of services so that worshippers are compelled to visit here. We could run more evening services, or maybe fewer, as rarity might heighten their appeal." But he noticed that his blank-faced curate was not listening, but was instead too ensconced in counting up his coins. It was a gloomy winter's day, the ice that had sheened the river's surface having now fragmented into floating chunks, rain pattering on the water and puddling the fields. A despondent Father Giel trudged the soggy pathways through the village, crossing the brook and watching a few lethargic ducks putter past below. He was on his way to the cobbler's to collect the mended shoes that he would need for his and Croft's week away at the conference he was annually compelled to attend, though, dragging the hood of his cape further down across his head, he regretted that they must both be expected to depart at such a crucial time. The weeks following Christmas were always tough in terms of footfall. Passing the Baptist chapel and the Methodist hall, both recent innovations, he cursed inwardly at the various acts of toleration that had seen their congregations rise and his dwindle. As he tramped past the inn, Giel's ire only deepened. At least the Methodists and other deluded denominations followed their wayward ways in pursuance of faith, had at heart the same yearning for salvation as he, as an Anglican, believed in and espoused. But those within the infernal confines of a public house were guided only by selfishness and excess, without thought for their spiritual obligations or the betterment of man. He saw them, swaying beyond the windows, already drunk before it was even midday. It was not that many decades ago, Giel reflected, that the craze for alcohol had nearly ruined this country. In the dark days of the previous century, with its supposed culture of enlightenment. Surely now, as we stepped into the bright new dawn of the 19th, humanity could learn to curb its greed for drink. Was it really too much to ask that this village, once a place of genteel respectability, might resist the urge to drown itself in drink? Damn the drunkards! Did they not see how, by partaking of the devil's grape, they helped to yank the world of men further from the nurturing goodness of the Lord's holy path, and down into the depths of sin? Shaking his head with a weary sigh, the disapproving vicar pushed open the door, entered the inn, and marched up to the bar, ordering himself a stiff whisky, one served with which he took a generous gulp and sat surveying the idle inebriates before him, and despairing for the moral backbone of the village. "Hey up, pal," grinned a large man in a torn farmer's tunic. "Budge up, would there?" And his portly neighbour, cheeks red with drink, plonked himself beside him in the snug, supping hard at an enormous jug of beer. Once he had banged it down on the table, he nodded at the vicar's collar and asked, "How do you do, father? Not got a service today?" No, but what, in any case, would be the point?" His one-man audience looked up from his beer, his surprise at the vicar's candour evident. "Well, where are all the parishioners?" Gilles's voice was becoming slightly slurred, and he knocked back the remainder of what must by now have been his fourth or fifth whisky. "They're all in here, or out there, or moving to live in other villages, other towns. Nobody bothers coming to church any more, my man. It's doomed. Christ Church is doomed." The younger man was all ears now, having never before been in the company of a vicar worse the wear for drink. He motioned to the landlord for another drink, promptly presenting it to Gill, who was continuing his dismal discourse. They will close it down," he stuttered drunkenly. "Demolish it. Send me packing into the workhouse. Or worse, they'll demote me. Make me curate, or have me sweeping the floors while that young careerist, Croft, takes my place as vicar." At the ignominy of this imagined fate, Gill flopped forwards, head bowed, and screwed up his face as he swallowed yet more whisky, its sour taste burning his throat. The room seemed to tilt slightly before his eyes, and he must have tried to stand, because he felt his new-found companion's hand on his elbow, steadying him. No, sit you down, father, rest you," came the soothing instruction. Before long he was drooping into a sleepy haze, and fought to stay awake. My shoes, I've got to get my shoes." "No, father, you just relax, your shoes are all right." Then, directed at the bar, "He's all right, just had a few too many. Don't worry, I'll get him home." Father Gill found himself being lifted up and led towards the door. After the pub's dull fug, the afternoon air, so grey before, now seemed blue and piercing to his eyes. Wincing, he nodded towards the cobbler's cobbled lane. But my shoes? What about my shoes?" "They look a perfectly good pair to me," came the cocksure reply. "They're on your feet." No, the ones in at the ones I left, I was meant to pick 'em up." "It's all right, father, just calm down. You're confused. You've had a bit to drink, that's all." And this remark hit the ears of several passers-by, who stopped to stare at the unlikely pairing. Two washerwomen returning from the well shook their heads, looking at Father Gill through opprobrious eyes. "Well, hark at him," tutted one. "His mate I can understand, he's never out at boozer. But the vicar? What's world coming to, our Agnes?" "It's no wonder no bugger's going to his church no more," observed Agnes tartly. "He'll be too potted to read his sermons." Similar barbed judgments fell on them from their fellow pedestrians, while the driver of a horse and cart could not help but laugh, and slowed down as he passed, in order to fix the embarrassed clergyman in his sights for longer. Just you ignore 'em all, father, and come with me. I'll get you home, safe and sound. Now, where do you live?"
"Isn't that obvious?"
snapped Jill.
"I live where all vicars live, at the vicarage."
"Oh, must be a bit crowded, eh, with all the vicars under one roof?" And his companion rocked with laughter at his own joke, linking his arm with the vicar's and leading him across the village square.